trousers and motorcycle boots and a black leather jacket with an eagle on the back. He had a hot sickle that took off like a gun. That fool was the terror of Highway 101.
Hey, here we are for another episode of Steeds Motorcycle Magazine. Ain't I like the best desktop drummer you ever seen in your life? I'm telling you, Confederate Railroad, they need to fire their drummer. Get back with me. Give me a job drumming for him. Gonna have to pay big bucks though. I already went through this video, but something was going on with the sound. I put the mic a little ways away from me. We'll see if we can do anything with it setting a different place. Let's start off showing you my shirt. I've been going through my closet wearing a lot of my vintage shirts. What's that cast? Oh, Daryl Dixon from The Walking Dead. Kind of a screwed up show, but I watched it for like first season. And Daryl rode a cool bike in the first season, and it had SS runes on the tank. But it got rid. The people who made this shirt were too politically correct to put the SS runes on it. Anyway, Daryl does, I can't say past tense because he's still doing it, and I guess he got signed on for another season, but I don't know when the season's going to start, of Ride with Norman Reedus, the actor's name, the real guy. The real guy's a bit of a big pussy. His character's alright. And his character's brother, Merle, was really alright. But on Ride with Norman Reedus, the first season, they had a bike on there and they were drag racing. And the guy had AKIA written on his helmet. That means, a lot of you know what it means, a Klansman I am. Well, they didn't know what it meant, apparently, and the first go around, they ran it without blurring it out. Subsequent times they showed that show, and if you go and you watch the show now, the letters will be blurred out. And if you've never seen the original show and the show before the letters were blurred out, and you were wondering, what are they blurring out there? That's what they blurred out, AKIA, in the interest of political correct bullshit. Okay, gotta talk about some kind of sad shit, and I'm gonna be pitching a bitch on people, and I'm probably gonna be cutting some ties, but I don't care. I don't give a shit. Cycle World Magazine just closed here in July after 64 years in business. They started in 1962. A lot of what you're seeing magazines closing, everybody thinks it's because of the internet. That's bullshit. A lot of them are closing. Even the ones that are closing lately are closing because they never recovered financially from the Chinese flu, now called COVID, after it was called a few other things in between. I still call it what it is, Chinese flu. It came about in China. It is the Chinese flu. And good old Fossey, he helped bring it into the world, and he won't do a day in jail. I think the estimate is 12 million people he killed with his bullshit, and he won't do a day in jail. But that hurt a lot of the bike magazines, because whenever the bike events weren't going on, and they should have been going on, we should have just said right there and went on with our bike events. We're supposed to be a rebellious lot. We're not just supposed to, bow down when the government tells us to. So But they closed the bike events and we didn't go to them, and the advertisers weren't advertising because the bike events weren't happening. So anyway, another magazine that I had a close relationship with for many years, a rocky relationship a lot of times, but a close relationship. I started writing for them whenever I was in federal penitentiary for bullshit firearms charges in a country where, as Americans, we're supposed to be allowed to own firearms. And there's technicalities about that. And technicalities that you wouldn't even believe are true, but they are true. So while I was doing my 8 years and 11 months, I was writing for magazines inside. One of the first ones I wrote for is Walneck's Classic Cycle Source. Wait, no, I'm sorry. Walneck's Classic Motorcycle Trader. It was like a selling bike and parts magazine, but there was a lot of articles in, and I wrote articles for them. I wrote up contests for them. Buzz and Pixie Walneck were always and are always so wonderful to me. They're just wonderful, great people. But then I started writing for Keystone Motorcycle Press. I was doing book reviews and just sending them to them. And then people were contacting the magazine and asking that I review their books, and they were sending me the books. So I got free books out of the deal, and plus I got paid for the review. And when I got out of prison, I kept writing for them, but it was kind of a rocky relationship. I had my ex-wife helping me. You know, she wasn't my ex. We were married right after I got out of prison, and we were doing articles together, and we would call it being in timeout. They'd get mad at me for something stupid and put me in timeout, wouldn't send me to any events. I'd still go to events, and then I'd submit them, and usually they were published. But like, for instance, they called me up and told me that, oh, I didn't have to cover Roar on the Shore in Erie, Pennsylvania, because they were going to take care of it. Dan Fingert, I still don't know how to say his name after all these years. It's one of them names with a whole bunch of consonants and hardly any vowels. And Marilyn Shields, she's married to Dan, but I think she kept her maiden name because she had a hard time pronouncing finger too. But they put me in timeout for that and said they were going to cover it. Well, then the people that ran the show said, oh, well, we were wanting them to cover it. So then he calls me back and says, oh, you can cover it. Yeah, they want you up there. So I did a little bargaining and I said, okay, but I also want this event, this event, this event. Okay, and that's what I got out of it. One other time, this guy in Denora, he is one of the Serinis that own, Babe Serini at a motorcycle shop in Denora. The building's still there. It's pretty much the way that Babe Serini left it when he left the place. A lot of his old tools and stuff are there. There's new old stock from like the 20s. New old stock tires from the 20s still in the wrapper. All kind of neat stuff. And we did a big article on it. But the Serini, and I can't remember his first name, that I did the article with, he told me that he wanted to turn the place into a museum, but it had been delayed because he was going through a divorce. There were several things he told me not to put on the record, and I didn't. If I'm doing an interview with you and you say, hey, please don't put this on the record, but I won't put it on the freaking record. I'm a man of my word. But he didn't tell me that I couldn't mention that he was getting a divorce. Well, I guess his wifey didn't know they were getting a divorce, or else they had patched things up. This guy called Dan and threatened to sue, and instead of Dan sticking up for me the way that Buzz Wolnick or some of my other editors would have done, Dan was just freaking out. Oh my, he's going to sue us, he's going to sue us. And I said, well, I have this all on tape. Oh, you taped the conversation? I said, hell yeah. And so he was calmed down a little bit. And the guy never sued. He never had no intentions of suing. He was just trying to calm his old lady down. But it's been a rocky road. And then the Chinese flu came about, and they told me they couldn't afford to pay me during the Chinese flu fiasco. I told them, hey, I've been writing for you for a lot of years. I'll write for free. You know, when I need you to get me into something for free, get me into it. But by this time, hey, we're back. I had some technical difficulties. So now we're at our remote studio, also known as the Red Roof Inn. But where I was at was saying that I told Marilyn Shields, Dan Fangert's, or however you say it's, wife, that I would go ahead and write for them for free for a little while till they got back on their feet after the Chinese flu debacle. So anyway, I told them just get me into the things for free, but I didn't need them to get me into the places for free because by this time, nobody ever asked me for a letter of assignment. I've been doing it long enough. They weren't asking me for letters of assignment or proof that I was a moto journalist, nothing like that. I just call and they say, okay. But I figured I worked for them for a good many years, knew them for a good many years, and I figured I'd try to help them out. Well, that went on for a lot of months, and finally, and I was writing for other publications too, and I was getting paid by them, but I still wasn't getting paid by Keystone Motorcycle Press. So I contacted them and said, hey, I suppose you're back on your feet now, and I'm gonna need a paycheck for these stories. Those of you that think, oh man, I'd love to be a moto journalist and think that we just, you know, go along with the party and we're out there, you know, tilting suds and getting drunk and just riding around having a good old time. Look, I've had a lot harder ways of making a living. And I like doing the writing and I like doing these videos. But, you know, the magazine work we do, it's work. You put a lot of time and effort and creativity in it to get a good story. And anyway, I said, hey, we got to start getting paid again. And she said, well, we're still having a tough time of it. But they were going on vacations to Mardi Gras and this and that. And I was like, piss on this. But then we did the Rally on Main, an article about a Washington County, Pennsylvania event. Actually, it's right in the city of Washington, Pennsylvania. Was until this scumbag anti-white racist mayor named JoJo something or other, who gives a shit what his name is, between him and the police, they put a stop to it. It was dumb. It was unnecessary. We talked about that in another video, so I'm not going to get into that. But we offered them the story. And Dimples, she, you know, sent it to them along with the photos, access to the photos, and told them what we wanted for it. And they said, oh, we can't afford to pay that. And so we come down about half price of what we normally get. And still, they were dickering with us on the price. I forget what their final offer was, and Dimples just said, basically, she said in a nice way, kick rocks. And the audacity of them dickering on the price tag when we wrote for that many months for free for them. My words are worth something. Our work is worth something. Dimple's photos are worth something. We don't do this for free. I remember one time we were at Little Sturgis in Sturgis, Kentucky, and the lady from Roadhawks magazine, her husband's dead now, and I don't want to talk ill of the dead. No, that's not true. If you're an asshole when you're alive, you're still an asshole when you're dead, okay? But anyway, she came up to us, she did the talking, and she said, hey, I see you at all the events that we're at. We need to get you to write for us. And we said, yeah, sure, give us a call. She called up, and Dimples told her how much we usually charge for an article, a very reasonable sum. We have to make a profit at this. It costs for your room. Some events pay for the room, but most of the cases not. We have to pay for our gas, our room, our food. And it's a lot of work. So she said, oh, we don't, usually pay our writers. And if you ever read Roadhawk magazine, you'd see the kind of quality of magazine you get when you won't pay your writers. But anyway, so we kind of parted ways on a less than friendly, less than happy manner. It wasn't real bad, but we parted ways. They sent me some articles that they hadn't printed that I had sent them from prison, and I kind of knew that was like saying, well, we're cutting ties, and that's fine by me. But she just put out notice that they're probably going to shut down because their computer got hacked, and she said she didn't know if they had the money to straighten out the computer problem. So there it lies, and even though we parted with kind of hard feelings, I'm not happy about them shutting down. I think that's a shame. Too many of the magazines are shutting down. We're going to move on to Cycle Source. They need to shut down. Damn shysters. When we did an article for them, Dimples told her exactly how much we charge. It's a very reasonable amount. She agreed to the price, and then we went, what would you say, 2 months? About 2 months trying to get pay from them. Isn't that about right? And trying to get the pay out of them. Just kept avoiding us, wouldn't return phone calls. Then we hear they're on a luxury liner. They're on a luxury liner taking a cruise, but we haven't got our money yet. So whether you think it's right or it's wrong, this was my way of handling it. I started calling his advertisers and saying, hey, do you know, they have a problem with paying their bills. 2 months ago, they published an article of mine and still haven't paid me yet. And some of their advertisers started calling them and saying, hey, why hasn't this man got his pay? And she finally paid. How I know she had no intentions of paying us, she was asking Dimples, do you take, what's that thing called, Venmo? Venmo. Asked if we take Venmo. They never asked that when we gave them the amount before, okay? And he was talking in an article about how drunk he was every day on the cruise ship and how high he was all the time on the cruise ship. But he couldn't get So it's been a rough and rocky road, and I think I'm about done with the magazine deal. I was going to work with Easy Rider, but I'm sure you've heard about the problem they got into because Keith Ball is being called pretty much not a chomo, but a supporter. Chomo in prison talk is child molester. Supporter of child molesting, which Keith Ball is not a supporter of child molesting, I'm pretty sure. But whenever I went and did the Loretta Lynn thing at the Loretta Lynn Ranch called the Motorcycle and Music Revival, hey, they gave me press passes. I told them who I was writing for, and then whenever I turned it over to Keith, he said, oh, they didn't want us at their event. Pretty hypocritical. We're talking about the Loretta Lynn Ranch. Think about this. It was on record that Loretta got pregnant to Mooney when he was in his 20s and she was 15. Well, the numbers didn't add up, and after Loretta got pressed on it, she finally admitted she was 13 when she got pregnant to this 20-something-year-old drunken fool named Mooney. So kind of hypocritical. I guess Keith's story was about a 20-some-year-old biker lusting after a 14-year-old. As far as I know, he didn't even screw her in the story, and he didn't get her knocked up. He was just lusting after her. No matter what you've been programmed to believe, that's not chomoing, okay? And this Magic 18 age is a fairly recent thing. Look at all the songs that were made about 16-year-olds. You're 16, you're beautiful in your mind. A teenager was not singing that song. A man in his 20s, I think he was probably in his mid to late 20s at the time, was singing that song. You're 16, you're beautiful in your mind. Look, I don't want a 14-year-old girlfriend. I have a hard enough time sometimes dealing with grown women. But the thing is, it's not pedophilia, all right? No matter what you think, it's not pedophilia, and if you're biblical, you have to know that Yeshua the Christ, his mother Mary was probably 13 to 15 years old. Joseph was probably in his late 30s. That's just the way it is. But I'm the only one that stood up for Keith. Everybody was putting him down, calling him a chomo and everything else, saying he was promoting child molesting. Keith didn't handle it right. He lied and said somebody else wrote the article because they were gone by his nickname. And he wasn't admitting it was his. And then he came back and admitted, hey, look, if you're going to bullshit, stick with the first story at least. You know, it's like that country song, hey, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. But then he admitted that he did write it. It looks bad. I don't know where the magazine's going. I do hope they stay afloat. But he has two of my articles, one on the Loretta Lynn deal. And I told him, I said, you have no legal obligation not to run it. They gave me a press pass. I went there. I covered it. We have every right in the world to run it. And then I did Hellbender Hootenanny, and guys, I'm sorry. I told you in all honesty that they sent me there to do the story. I submitted it to it. Well, Dimple submitted my article. She submitted her photos. We haven't heard anything from them. I've sent, I think, 3 emails to him, and Dimples has sent him 2 emails. We're talking 5 emails, and we have heard nothing back from him. So after, what the hell's it been now? More years than I want to admit. At least 20, I think 23 years of writing for motorcycle publications. I think I'm done. I'll still do the occasional, like sometimes I'll have somebody contact me and say, hey, would you write a couple 4 paragraphs on this subject for me? because I know this is something you know a lot about, and I don't. And this much they pay me, and I do it. It's hard for me to do that kind of writing because I'm gonna be shy about it. I'm an egomaniac. I know it. And I have a hard time letting someone else sign their name to my work. I really do. But I've done it before for the money. But I have a lot of material that hasn't been used. And I'm going to bring it up and use it. Plus I'm going to tell a bit about some of the crap I've been through in the course of doing moto journalism. And I hope you guys support me on this effort. And when the book comes out, I hope you buy it. I'm going to keep doing these videos. We're going to keep Steeds Motorcycle Magazine live and going. We have a swap meet coming up pretty soon. I'm not sure the date on it, but in Ohio, we're going to be at it. And of course, we're going to be at the Germantown Hoedown. I don't want to miss that one because it's a good event, and you guys shouldn't miss it either. But, help us out with this endeavor. And we're giving you some pretty good material. We're not promoting homosexuality and, drag queens and other goofiness like that clown cycle drag is. So, support us. Pass it on. Pass this video on. Say, hey man, you gotta watch this crazy nut on Steeds Motorcycle Magazine. Tell them, you gotta watch it. Pass it off to your friends. Like us, subscribe to our channel. We're gonna make this thing a success. But it's always great talking to you folks. You take care, and we'll get you on the next episode of Steeds Motorcycle Magazine.